think the resilience, the grit, the ability to persevere and continue in the midst of challenge is one of the greatest skills that we can develop in all areas.
When things get challenging, you'll have this anchor light will shine through even through dark times.
A lot of times spirituality is forgotten, and people just get absorbed by the career.
The intersection of business, spirituality, and life often are separated. But the goal actually can be, if you align your values, if you align your spirituality, and if you align your life, your business actually goes and will be a lot more successful. So what we did was we interviewed about 100 CEOs and asked them, how are they most successful? And they say, well, I keep core to my values, and through my values, I'm able to then grow. They go, I keep core to my spirituality, and a lot of people are actually finding God later in life and realizing how important that is, and allows them to be more successful. So today we thought, let's bring Reb Adam in, who's a massive social media influencer and conversationalist, but has also done actionable items helping people align their spirituality, their business life, and their values themselves, and bring them to a level of coaching, happiness, and connectivity to who they are as a people. So today you're going to get direct insights how to align these three things up, how to actually be more successful, and you're going to learn that from all different angles. He's worked with UFC fighters, ex-UFC champions, CEOs, every entrepreneur you can possibly find. So make sure you stay tuned to the end of this episode, and we're going to go give you direct insight on how to take things home, how to be more successful, but also how to connect to your inner God. He's got a great story, and we're really excited for everybody to listen. So thanks for coming. Reb Adam, welcome. We're excited for you today. Thanks for everybody for coming on, and welcome to Resilient Riches. Reb Adam, we got to get right into how you got to this. How you look is very different than how you did look back in the day. So first we got to uncover that a little bit. But let's get right into it. Reb Adam, can you give us about a minute background? I know Jews like to tell their stories in real time, like my father. So let's get right into how you got to where you are, how you look the way you look. And I know you were in Kollel for a while. So let's go right into that.
Sure. Parents, former USSR, grew up what I like to call less than reformed, totally disconnected, had quite a journey through the years, lots of questioning. Atheist phase, agnostic phase, new age phase, and eventually found myself asking the deepest questions of what does it mean for me to be Jewish and have this background? And those prayers were immediately answered. Found myself in a yeshiva in Or Samech in Jerusalem for 2 years. Indeed, I was in Kollel for 3 years. And for the past 2 years, I've been building my coaching company, as you had mentioned, helping people converge spirituality, business, and really all areas of life.
So let's go. Why does it actually matter? Why do people actually need to converge their business, their spiritual, and their personal lives together instead of just separating it?
It's a great question. I think intrinsically, every major area of life is in essence spiritual, because everything has to do with our mission, our expression in this world. So if we put in our spark, our expression, our skills and talents, what we've been given from above, and we can choose to believe, actually invite the creator into the process, into all of our endeavors, not to compartmentalize that business is business and then spirituality nuts. I do believe it's one thing, and it's very freeing and empowering, at least for my clients, when they step into that type of mindset.
But what are they actually looking to accomplish?
A lot of people value themselves and find their worthiness based on their externalities. I hear it again and again. I've heard people who have built wonderful things and then have crashed and burned. And they all agree that at some point, they became their business. They were defined by their business and their success. I believe for us to step into the spiritual identity, what I like to call the essence identity, the soul being at its deepest root, unconditionally valuable, perfectly good, and eternal, and that our purpose is right here, right now, wherever we are, because it's exactly where the Creator has put us. I think it's so important because, as your podcast is called, I think the resilience, the grit, the ability to persevere and continue in the midst of challenge is one of the greatest skills that we can develop in all areas, let alone in business. And having such mindsets rooted in spirituality is the greatest way to do that.
So what are the mindsets that people have to have? Like what's the actual change in mindset that you're seeing from pre people not having this connectivity to post people having this connectivity? Like what is the exact change? And if you can walk me through how you would change somebody.
Sure. Absolutely. As mentioned, first and foremost, I like to teach healthy before holy. A lot of people come to me thinking they're going to have this ecstatic experience with God and connect to these lights. And I'm like, whoa, let's slow it down. Do you love yourself? And such a question really opens up a lot of doors in regards to where people are aiming for, and what their goals might be is really just a means to a much deeper goal, which is often a means to the deepest of goals. So I actually help people affirm and identify with themselves again as unconditionally valuable, perfectly good, and eternal, meaning I give them a framework that when they have a particular trigger, let's say a challenge in their day-to-day, in their business, that something's not going through, they see some red in the account, whatever the case, and they become aware just through the experience and through our conversations that there is a lack of worthiness or value, or there's a fear, a limiting belief that pops up, to now step into, well, this actually has nothing to do with me at my deepest core. I am, as I interface into this body, I'm experiencing this in the moment, but I can choose otherwise. I can choose a resilient mindset and choose my intrinsic value, as opposed to defining myself on the externality. So first and foremost, what I do with an individual is I lead them through an initial clarification process. Because some people come to me with particular goals, but we double check that. We go through all the areas of life and their subcategories and check out the mental, emotional, and behavioral dynamics within each of those subcategories, and just gauge what are immediate incremental goals and steps we can take.
So what you're doing first and what people should be doing first is, instead of going, okay, this is what I'm looking to accomplish, it's finding out who you are as a person first. So how does somebody, just a do it DIY kind of person, how are they doing it themselves to actually find that initial identity piece?
Their strengths. First and foremost, see what you're good at and acknowledge that that is what the Creator has given you for you to fully express that into the world. And in tandem with that, the challenges that are often the case as well, as far as pain points and opportunities, those are specifically where the corrections, so to speak, of our inner being and psychology come into play. But seeing what our strengths are hints to the unique personality of our essence, because each and every one of us has a most unique essence spiritually, hence the physical manifestation of each and every one of us having a unique fingerprint, for example. And so to see what one's leanings are in their personality, are they more on the side of ambition and drive? Are they more on the side of artistry and calm and flow? And to be able to double down, first and foremost, on that.
So it's doubling down on what's working. So if something is working for you, you just continue. You go deeper into that point.
Absolutely.
All right. So somebody gets, they find out that they're really, really good at math. They're really good at A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Let's just say I'm really good. My strength, so I know, is relationships. I really feel like I have a talent with relationships, and I can get deep. My wife makes fun of people. It's like people give Yair their social security numbers before they give him his name. So it's like, and I think my dad can attest to that too. It makes a lot of sense. But once I found that strength, I went, let's double down on relationships. Let's take relationship courses. Let's take sales courses. Let's take conversation courses. Like, let's develop that even further. So somebody first defines that. What is the next stage? Okay, so they love thyself. What is the next stage that you recommend people to go through? Not what you do, but what you recommend people to go through.
If they find a strong anchoring, let's say, in their light, then they can scuba dive into the abyss, so to speak. at least in the spiritual realm of self-development, coaching, and so forth, there's a lot of talk of working on one's challenges and seeing our pain points, our shadows, the shadow work, so to speak. And that is important, but without first being anchored in your goodness, anchored in your light, it could be dangerous. You could get caught in loops of self-criticism and negativity and so forth. So if I'm anchored and double downing on what's working and what's good, now I can also check out the nooks and crannies in a greater efficiency, because I'm not going to be as debilitated by them. I'm actually going to be empowered by the opportunity, excited to make those shifts in where I'm struggling.
So can you give an example?
Sure. Someone is incredibly artistic, flow. They are the visionary type, where big visions, but they're not as practical, let's say, in the details and the analytics. And that also manifests in a lack of ambition and drive. They're more on the chill and calm side, given that nature, let's say. So if they're doubling down on the visionary side and they're able to think big and large and step into that, love themselves from that place, connect to that identity, and now they can see that, well, they really could use a bit more structure, time management, and energy management, and they could build, let's say, meditative practices to envision and see what it is they want to continue building, or other pathways and endeavors they want to take, whether that business endeavor or something else altogether, and then begin closing that gap.
So then you're taking, so they're anchoring on something. So meaning, my understanding and my feeling is that you're saying anchor on something, because when things get challenging, you'll have this anchor light will shine through, even through dark times.
Correct.
Is that correct? So what's the next stage?
Shining the light upon the challenge. We are taught in the mystic tradition that nothing would exist if it didn't have a spark of light within it. And so that framework in itself is something that is freeing and empowering. So if a person approaches their challenge or blockage, their fear, the limiting belief, you name it, with that perspective, not only is this for me, but I can actually gain the tools to go inside and experience, not just cognitively, experience tangibly what the purpose of this challenge is. And that's already getting a bit deeper, building from that basic CBT protocol into more of a spiritual meditative approach, let's say, where we dive in based on the Baal Shem Tov's method, the 3-step tikkun hamidot, the correction of our character traits, which is hachna'a, havdala, v'hamtaka. There's a subjugation, meaning become aware of that challenge. There's a separation, which is I have nothing to do with this as my deepest core, but that's been given to me as an opportunity to grow. And then the hamtaka, which is the sweetening or elevation, meaning let me actually extract the purpose of how this is for me, how this is building me, and give my burden to the creator, so to speak, because it's not mine to begin with. It's just a deposit. I'm just borrowing it.
So the bad deed or the bad action that you have can be separated. And because you're going, it doesn't define me. So I'm able, that's not who I am. This is something else that was given to me, and I'm basically giving it back.
Yes.
Like a return policy to God. The Persians will love that.
Well,
but continue.
I mean, to that point, we're given baggage, so to speak. People feel like they have baggage from their life experience. They might even feel like, maybe it's like a past life type of thing. And I'm like, okay, great. What's wrong with that? Open up the bag. There's gold and silver in the bag. There's riches in the bag. You want to throw away the bag? God's knocking on your door, so to speak, and wants to give you a gift. You're going to throw it out. You're going to accept the package. Actually open it up and see what riches are inside.
Yeah, it's really deep, because I'm actually thinking how much more successful people would be if they can identify the bad parts of the bad deposits that they were given and how to remove those bad deposits and how much more successful they will be. I find that very deep and very profound. But what about the external badness that's around us? How can you get rid of external factors that come our way? Divorce, death, abuse, attack, all these other things.
So what you're saying is deep in your reflection, being that if we remove the bad deposits, then we'd be much more successful, much more efficient in our endeavors. If I can propose, not only is it the removal of the bad deposits, but it's discovering how within the deepest kernel of the bad deposits is actually a deposit of richness that we can cash in. And so whether it's...
Yep.
What's that?
Continue, please.
So whether it's, in your case, the divorce, the wars, you name it, to consider the framework that this is not to me, this is for me, and that I can go in and discover an experiential way. And I'm speaking quite vague because it's one of these things that's like, if you know, you have to experience such a facilitation, an experience of what's been in the tradition for thousands of years that's just now coming back to light, of how is this supposed to connect me deeper to my deepest sense of self, and therefore to the creator himself. And then from there, what can be more resilient than that? And that even the darkest and most difficult of times and challenges is actually coming to empower me. Easier said than done, but that's, the utopian ideal, that we can gain tools to step towards that one step at a time.
It's very like, not to get too specific on people, it's very Rab Nachmani. It's like has that same style of like you should always be happy. Like it's a big mitzvah to be always happy in life.
Sure.
And I think that's because it's much more your mindset when something happens to you, you're actually happy. And I have a close friend of mine who has a clinically diagnosed disease or disorder that he is actually perpetually happy. And he goes, there's like a few people in the country like this, like that he's holding his mother died in his arms and he's actually happy. He doesn't wake up. It doesn't exist. It's an actual disease. And I know Rabbi Nachman suffered from like severe depression, and this was how his way of pulling himself out of the depression, like some like just crazy on his stories. Is this all coming from the same Baal Shem Tov root and the same spiritual religion, like Jewish education roots?
I believe so. In essence, this is methodology and understanding according to the Baal Shem Tov as he understood it from the Arizal. In my specific and perhaps unique expression for what I teach and facilitate for clients is also the Baal HaSulam, Rav Ashlag, who was my Rebbe's Rebbe. He was the author of the Zohar, Zohar's main commentary in the past century, called the Sulam, the ladder. And he breaks things down very simply.
It's It's like basically like the Kabbalah for those who don't know what the Zohar is.
Yes. Yeah, one of the biggest disseminators and translators, commentators of Kabbalah in the past century. And he breaks things down very simply in terms of light and vessel. Light being the positive experience that you can have day to day, the positive emotions and feelings, or, greens in your business endeavors. And then the vessel, in one parameter, is the pain and the suffering, is the challenges that we go through that prepare us for a greater light in the next step. But to your point, as far as Rabbi Nachman, if someone is experiencing some type of down to that degree, and we know this today in modern psychology as well, that to have a pattern interrupt, to do a radical behavioral change and shift can be very healing to one's psychology.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's you really need to do something different. I think, and using externals is very limiting. It has to be something that there has to be a rewire of it. So let's break it down to money. How can people make money doing this and be more successful, be more wealthy? What is the actual tangibles that people can walk away with instead of living a more happy life? But some people just need to make more money. Like that's just where it is. Like if you got real expenses and you're making $10,000 a month and you need to be making $30,000 a month, like how can doing this turn into some real tangible dollars?
Sure. Well, if we're talking about, let's say, Hishtadlut, like putting in one's best efforts, and depending on one's sector and line of business, let's say the volume that is necessary to see a return that someone might desire. I believe, and I think psychology today can confirm, that a person is going to be more efficient in their business endeavors when they're actually in a flow state, in a place of calm and peace and resilience, as opposed to, let's say, a place of stress. But it just so happens that we have a belief system that says, if I'm stressed, I'll be better in my endeavors. I'll get it done. I'll create some type of emergency and so forth. And that goes to a deep theory that we wouldn't do something unless we believed it was correct. And so people believe that what we would describe as a chaotic thinking process, not necessarily the healthiest of thinking processes, equate to a greater income because of my angst. Maybe have more phone calls, close more deals because I'm up and at 'em. As opposed to the calm and peace, which I would argue is actually a greater place for efficiency in all endeavors, whether it's sales itself, whether it's interactions and relationships, you name it.
I actually agree with that. I used to get very stressed in college, and I used to get this stomach pain that was like unbearable. And then I realized how to work around my stress, and everything I became a lot more successful around that. And the stomach pain, only when I like just have a lot of family pressures or things like that. But I just work around, like my whole life is to be based around stress. And I'm a lot more efficient, a lot more successful, a lot happier since that point. Last question for you, and then I want my dad to come in because he's got some really amazing insights here. What is the moment in your life that you found that level of resilience, that level of depth that allowed you to overcome being so successful? Because resilience, I think, is the light that you're talking about, and not to get too deep, but resilience is that light that allows you to push through it. Like all the other stuff is different than the resilience piece. So what was that light for you personally?
Meaning the particular moment or the
Particular moment.
Sure. Well, I think starting my company was the particular moment. I think the combined income of my wife and I at the time when we started the business was well under 20,000 a year. And her, even with that, having worked 3 jobs at the time with our newborn at home while I'm learning full time, for us to take a leap of faith and to quite literally embody and express everything we've been talking about here as far as these mindsets and this resilience to say, we're going to be okay. We're going to do it, not be in a place of stress. And let me try to close what clients I can in order that we can pay off our expenses. Rather, it will be, and all is well. And I'm going to put in my best efforts. I'm going to put in the volume, but it's going to be from a place of calm and collectiveness. And I thank God that's exactly what it was. It was quick success.
It's
Up and
amazing.
at 'em.
Overnight success just took you 40 years. Dad?
Thank you, Yair, for inviting me in at this point. So
You're
actually,
welcome.
I actually find this like very fascinating because you're in outside Jerusalem, which is probably the highest spiritual city in the world, and we're in New York City, which is probably the most spirit, the opposite of spirituality, perhaps, and generating wealth. I mean, in terms of money, it's probably that's the capital. So it's like very diametrically opposed on that side. And I find also like what you're saying is this, a lot of times spirituality is forgotten, and people just get absorbed by the career. And it sounds to me like what you're trying to do is bring people out of that so that they can realize it and sort of like separate the emotional from the personal. Like it's not like if something if something is going wrong at work, that's not like a personal insult against me and my own value. that my value stays the same. This is something that God is sending to me to challenge me. But I have a couple of questions. Just it seems like, and you said that you could talk a little bit more about how you get clients. Like, where do they find you? And I'm very interested to know, like, the first meeting you have with them. How do you, like, what do you say to them? What are you saying to them? And I'm actually I'll give another part B. I think
Part
Yair was
C.
trying to get to this a little bit. Is like, if you have like a more specific example, we don't obviously need any names, but let's say a client that you found, that you came, what that problem was, what what did you say to him, and how did that help him, and where is that today?
Sure. Great questions. So first and foremost, just for review, is again how I get my clients.
Yeah, let's start with that. Like, how do people find you, and what is like what do you say to them in the first meeting? Like, you can't start talking to them about, like your, Rabbi Nachman or the Baal Shem Tov. If you're getting secular people from social media, you can't start jumping into the author of the Zohar and Kabbalah, I'm sure.
I love that you phrase it like that, because that happens to be the case.
Okay.
In the sense that, I have, thank God, a wonderful social media platform. I have over 130,000 followers cross-platform, primarily on Instagram. And I'm sharing daily these insights, these tidbits, these mindset shifts according to Kabbalah. And whether it's a direct Torah approach, or it's more self-development as far as psychology and coaching, or sometimes just quirky stuff from my own experience and the different multifaceted personality that I have, and just connecting to people in that way. People come to me a lot of the time. It's very organic. I have these leaders reach out and they want to get on a call. They say they've loved the content, they've been following for some time, and they wanted to discover what it looks like to work with me. I do my own outreach as well, and I do that in a very targeted way. I look for people that I could be inspired by, someone that I feel a similarity to. I work with primarily, let's say, CEOs and founders. I am one myself, and I understand the travails of that process and the ups and downs and all the rounds that people experience. And so I want to speak to that point of their heart, because I have it within me. And so I do reach out directly to people as well. Some cold DMs, hot DMs, you name it. But I just invite them to a conversation. So what does that conversation look like? I share a lot of the principles I shared with you guys today. And I said that this is the methodology, this is the foundation. I would like to empower you with a positive and resilient psychology so that you can have the greatest of spirituality. I'm not here to skip steps. You got to start at level 0, 0.1, 0.2. Some people come to me thinking they can just, fly off and I'm some type of guru. I'm far from. I'm with everyone else doing the work myself. I've had plenty of coaching, mentorship, and therapy myself in the past couple of years, and continue so today. So it's a journey for all of us.
So how about like a specific example? Like, let's say
Sure.
You reached out on DM, or someone followed you for a while, and he's the president of the United States, and he reaches back out to you and he says, everything's going to be great. I want to make it greater. How do I do that, Reb Adam?
That's great, because one of my dreams is to also be involved in coaching the Trump administration. I would love to get involved. If Tony Robbins could work with the Clintons, I think, this administration would be open to Jewish spirituality.
He has a Jewish daughter-in-law, so
there you go. And I just sent her a DM yesterday, and she responded with a shalom. So she follows me, interestingly. So there you are.
So what would you say? Like, what's the first conversation to that person? And what is an example? Like, is he like a small business owner? Is it Jewish, not Jewish? Is it from all around the world, mostly Israel? Who is it?
It's primarily Jewish. I work with all peoples, though, but it happens to be someone who's Jewish. It is true that they're secular leaning, but they're interested. They're a searching soul, similar to my own journey. They've connected to spirituality in all types of ways, New Age and the like, Eastern traditions, only to slightly discover that they have everything and some in their own backyard, because they want to discover a little bit more of that with myself. So that discovery process looks like, as mentioned, going through the general areas of their life with sensitivity to their mental, emotional, behavioral alignments within each of them. But to answer your question of a practical example, someone came to me, he's a head of a law firm, and he was dealing with panic attacks on average
Is
twice a
that in
month.
New York, in Israel? Where was he?
He's in Colorado.
Okay.
Most of my clients indeed are in the States. I've had some Israeli clients, I've had some European clients, but mostly in America. I would say New York, LA for the most part.
Okay.
Those are the hubs. So this gentleman was dealing with 2 anxiety attacks a month on average. When he would have them, he would not be able to sleep the same day, let alone 2 nights in a row. So sometimes the opposing party in these cases would send him even death threats, and he would take him seriously and it would really not have him, let alone sleep at night, let alone be stressed and angry with his wife and 2 little daughters. That he would have a challenge with that as well. He felt like he was very short-tempered with them. And he came to me specifically with that. He wanted to help get some emotional, mental resilience. He appreciated the spiritual approach. I want to say within a month, he said that his marital harmony shot through the roof. He would still get a panic attack, but he would be able to melt it within a minute to 90 seconds. And as opposed to taking over his entire body and feeling stress, he would have like this little, 1% left maybe in his shoulder area. But he said he would sleep like a baby the same day.
Okay,
How
so let
did
me
he do
stop you
that?
for a second. Let me stop you for a
Yeah.
second. That's a good example. I think that's very helpful. So I know Yair is going to cut me off in a few minutes. So I just have a little bit more to talk about. So in this specific case, Mr.
Less than a
Smith,
few minutes. Less than a few minutes.
Mr. Smith, typically, if in New York at least, or in my, I'm more Orthodox, we would go to a psychiatrist, we would go to a psychologist, we would get prescribed medication. Did he do all those things before he came to you? And he came to you because that wasn't working? Because that would be like your normal next step. You're a little bit off the beaten path.
Correct. Yeah, I'm definitely not mainstream in many dimensions, I could say. In his case, indeed, it was perfect timing in terms of when I had literally opened up my coaching practice and he had just finished with his psychologist. And he said it was good, but he wanted to have that extra dimension. And I would challenge in my great bias that that's what's missing. I mean, psychology in its term is psycheology, it's the study of the soul. But modern psychology and the like absolutely has no spirituality attached to it. So it's very cold and medical.
Is he still going to the psychologist and with you, this fellow?
He did an initial program and he flew his wings. He
You
he
didn't
did
feel like
wonderfully.
being a
And
psychologist anymore.
no,
So I have
no.
one last question. I know Yair's gonna get mad at me. Just like it's just something curious for me because when I was at Orsamelech, you were at Orsamelech, we went through a similar type of process there as well. And just the program that you mentioned a lot of the Baal Shem Tov. So is it the Baal Shem Tov? Is that all it's doing? Or have you developed something like that? You could send out here's the manual from Reb Adam. It has some Baal Shem Tov. It has some modern psychology. It has some my own. Is that what we're talking about, or is it pure Hasidic Torah? That's what you're giving.
It's large in part, I would say, Hasidic Torah, Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman, Rav Ashlag, the Rebbe of Piazetzna. And it just so happens to converge with modern psychology, given that a lot of the methodology is based on CBT, cognitive behavioral
But
therapy.
just to be clear, I mean, you don't. I'm not saying as a disparity or anything, but you don't have a psychology background. You were mentioning
Correct.
before you were in hip hop before, and you were moving forward with that before you left everything. So you don't really have psychology training or anything like that, right? It's all the yeshiva training.
Yeshiva training, large in part. I've had a personal mentor and guide who has spoon-fed me a program that he took, a legitimate like Hasidic psychology program, 4 years full time. So he's been giving me the expedited teachings of that. So I am trained in that as how to facilitate that. It's not adhered to in Israel as a legitimate program because of its spiritual nature. They don't, credit it as if it was a legitimate program, but my clients could say otherwise.
Okay, I think that Yair's going to cut
Reb
me out.
Adam, how can people find you? How can people get connected with you? And a few of the before that, I think the main takeaways is some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. And traditional paths don't necessarily work for everybody. For people who are missing a big part of their life, we think these are the ways that you can actually change your mindset. And it's changing your mindset. And I think the thing that I took away most is you were deposited a bad nature. You can also exit that bad. You can get rid of it. So you can clean things up, even though they're not just necessarily going to be part of you, and cope with it. You can actually remove it from yourself, which I think is incredibly deep. So Reb Adam, thank you for all your insight and opening up. How can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can check out my website first and foremost, rebadam.com. They can check me out on all social media platforms at Reb Adam Yitzchak. And they can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Adam Isaac Polanowski. They didn't let me do the Yitzchak there. Birthday is Isaac.
Yitzchak? Why? There's too many Reb Adams Yitzchaks.
I don't know. It's my birthday. I submitted my ID. It says Isaac. So there you are.
I don't know why. Yeah, all right. I guess we'll call LinkedIn for you and try to get you back in good standing for the Yitzchak. But
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everybody for listening. And I'm happy that we did a prelim prior, because you guys could go on forever about your history. But it's really, you guys really have a fascinating story, and really appreciate you opening up to everyone. Thank you everyone for listening. And as always, we'll see you on the next one. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member at FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth Inc. is a separately owned other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth Inc. The opinions expressed herein are for general information only, as not necessarily the opinions of Osaic Wealth Inc. or its representatives. It is not intended to provide specific advice or recommendation for any individual. Please consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation.